Welcome to The Cardinal, News of Virginia, a podcast from Cardinal News. We are a nonprofit news outlet covering Southwest and Southside Virginia at cardinalnews.org. The Cardinal podcast is sponsored by 5 Points Creative, a full-service, award-winning marketing firm serving clients all over the U.S. from their headquarters in Roanoke, Virginia. I'm Dutchie Jessee, and today I'm talking with Tad Dickens, who is our Cardinal News technology reporter.
Hi, Dutchie.
Hi, Tad. Thank you for coming in to talk about a project you're working on with regards to Roanoke City sort of reinventing itself from a town that started as very much a railroad town, right? And now it's had this, this transformation over recent decades into a real hub for the biotechnology field, right? So let's talk about it. Go ahead and dig in with what we're doing. A series of articles. Is that what we're doing? Okay.
Yeah, we're still trying to decide whether it's 4 or 5 or maybe 6 articles. But we're right in the, we're fooling around in there and trying to figure it all out. But this thing started, I guess, it's 25-year sort of timeline of when this happened, which lays out roughly with the extent of time that I've been in this city. And I remember when I first moved here, I'd be driving down Jefferson Street and seeing like the silos at the mill and train stuff and the old trolley barn there. And it was very industrial, right in between downtown and the hospital. And which at that time, I guess it had changed its name to Carilion Clinic by that point. But
so are we talking about Community Hospital
Memorial.
Or Roanoke? Roanoke Memorial. So RMH, Carilion Roanoke Memorial, yeah.
Exactly. And I was kind of interested in that sort of contrast of landscape. And then it was right around that time that the city and Carilion were discussing the possibility of acquiring land around there to expand what Carilion could do. And also, on a third track, Carilion's Ed Murphy and Virginia Tech's Charles Steger were, starting to get to know each other a little bit and talk about stuff like building a medical school. And then they also had what became Fralin Biomedical Research Institute. At that time, I think it was called Virginia Tech Carilion Biotechnical Research Institute or something like that. It's my memory, rest in peace. Anyway, it's all on the page. You'll find it all there. So all these things were kind of happening, and then slowly but surely, and then in larger, faster bursts, that skyline was transformed. Mills were torn down. Apartment buildings, large buildings across the street on Jefferson where Riverside Center was growing. Fralin Biomedical Research Institute was going there. The medical school was going in there. A hotel was built to serve people that were coming in for different things to do with the hospital itself, where people were having, major procedures done, and there was cancer research going on. And so that just changed in the space of a few years to totally transform that area of downtown. And I was always interested in that, and this job here at Cardinal was a great avenue for me to kind of discover, what brought it on and how it came to be. And that's been some of the most fun I've had for the past year or so.
Cool. So did you pitch the story?
I did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Isn't that cool to be able to because you said this was kind of informed in your experience living here because you're not from Roanoke originally, right?
Right.
So you moved here how long ago?
25 years ago, going on 26.
And that was for a job or? Okay.
I came here to work at the Roanoke Times and was there for a long time before I came to Cardinal.
So you've been on the technology beat how long?
It's going on 2 years.
Okay.
About a year and a half.
Okay. So very interesting. What has been, as you've dug into this and looking at how, as you mentioned, the skyline is transformed, and sidebar, it's so interesting when you live in a place for a long time, how you remember, like if you're a reporter, you might remember the announcement, the press conference, all the theory, all the theoretical discussions and even renderings and things like that. And now, like on my way to record today, I passed all the things we're talking about because I came that way. So I passed Riverside and some of the other areas we're talking about right over there at RMH, Roanoke Memorial. So what has been surprising to you as you've more formally looked at this whole aspect of Roanoke sort of transforming itself into this regional hub for the biotech sector?
One of the surprising things to me was how little before this Carilion and Virginia Tech and the city of Roanoke actually banded together to do things. As I'm sure you're well aware, that WVTF was something that it could have been down in Blacksburg, but they kept it in Roanoke.
The public radio station.
That was one of the things that was a project, amongst the city and the university. We got the Hotel Roanoke and Conference Center project. Yeah. Those were two things that sort of happened, but they were random. They weren't part of a long-term, let's build an entire new economy for this region. But they really pulled a lot of people into it. Probably the key part of what I'm talking about in this series, the thesis, I guess, is that the city of Roanoke had a lot to do with it. The city was the one that acquired the land, sometimes controversially, or a rubber baby buggy around Carilion so that they could expand, which they felt like they needed to do. And they've been involved, different city officials, all the way along up until now when they're developing the lab building on Jefferson Street, which Roanoke is, pretty much the spearhead. The city is in charge of building that out and getting it together. So it's a new thing in this century, something that didn't really happen before. They were like worlds apart, really.
Which probably seems like now it's easy to look back on things and say, well, that's a no-brainer. And we take it for granted. Oh, of course. We see VT, we see Roanoke, we see Carilion, all those things linked in. But someone had to come up with it and really put it together. Have you been talking with a few key people who have just been real gold mines in this process that you can talk about here for this podcast, and just talk about some of the people and the experience that they had when they were coming up with these ideas and approaching people to say, hey, this might really work? Did they run into resistance? I mean, talk about that a little bit, put it in context.
Sure. Well, to start with, the main people that really were at the center of it, and I've already mentioned their names before, are both deceased. And so I was unable to speak with either Charles Steger or Ed Murphy.
Right.
And it was sort of them brainstorming that sort of brought on what became the heart of Riverside Center. But also, and there will be people in the series that will specifically give her credit, Darlene Burcham, former city manager of Roanoke, who was brought in even before her time started to try to work with all the entities and come up with a way to help Carilion grow in the spot where it still exists at Roanoke Memorial after all these years. And Nancy Agee, who followed Dr. Murphy, and Tim Sands, the Virginia Tech president, who followed Charles Steger. Right. They both worked very closely together as the years went by, and helped make this thing a reality. So those were some key players that were involved in it. And so fortunately, I've been able to speak with Dr. Agee and Dr. Sands, Michael Friedlander. I'm calling a lot of people doctor here. He's a doctor too, but not trying to be too formal here. But Darlene spoke with me a couple of times. I've spoken with a few people who were on city council at the time about their experiences of it. And I think one of the friction points, actually the few friction points in getting this developed, came with some of the property acquisition.
Okay.
The milling company did not necessarily want to move, and they still had, theirs was not necessarily a blighted property, and there was another outfit that was nearby there that also, and I can't remember the name of it now, it'll be in the stories.
But just cardinalnews.org.
Yeah, exactly. Look for this in the very near future. Was another outfit that a flooring company that surface flooring, and they definitely had a nice situation, didn't want to move, and the city used eminent domain, and both of those cases, wound up going before judges. And before they went before a judge, I think the milling company settled with the city and also got a really perfect piece of property out in Roanoke County to operate from, and so they were able to grow out that way. But those were tension points, and ultimately, the state passed a law that said if an area is not actually blighted, you cannot put a cloud of condemnation over it. So it couldn't happen today. A couple of those properties,
Right.
But in that era, they negotiated. Everybody was more or less satisfied, which was not always the case when it comes to eminent domain in the city of Roanoke. Historically, it was used a lot for urban renewal. So the city was not that far removed from the controversies and really bad actions of those days when places like the Carilion Clinic were put under a cloud and couldn't grow. Same situation. Now, all of that is illegal. If you have a going concern and it is not a blighted property, even if it's surrounded by blighted properties, you still can keep your land. So that has changed, but the reality on the ground is that area is now all property of VTC, where they're growing stuff.
What are some of the programs and institutions that are keeping things on track these days?
I think you would look at Roanoke Blacksburg Technology Council and Verge. I think one of the two is the umbrella organization, Verge, I believe. But point being that they are involved in things that try to provide a technological workforce. They're involved in trying to keep people here. They're doing programs. The city obviously has done some things. For example, the city donated $500,000 to Virginia Western Community College so that they could start out a program that puts a lot of kids and young adults too, in some real lab experience, getting some real biology experience that would make them capable of working in any number of the labs that are starting to spring up now that there are companies starting to spin off from Fralin Biomedical Research Institute, for example, and are looking for employees. Another thing that the city and its leaders have been involved with, and all this includes city managers and city council members, is this clean room space that is like very essential for companies that are working in medicine, for example, to have a completely disinfected area to work in. And they're building that inside an existing part of Fralin Biomedical Research Institute. So a lot of lab space is coming online, which is going to provide a place to work, because if you don't have any place to put them, then you can't really get anybody. Verge, RBTC have been at the center of doing things like the Changemakers program, which I've spoken some with leaders there, such as Aaron Burcham and Taylor Spellman, about what's going on with that. It is a way that they could draw young technology people who are in between their third and fifth year of working, early on, right out of college, that up to 3 to 5 years in their new professions, trying to bring them together for networking opportunities and to also understand some about the culture here and fun stuff to do in order to, they hope, keep folks here in the region after they've gotten their experience at their first job. Maybe that second job, if they're looking for something, will be available in town, because at the same time they're doing the Changemakers programs and stuff like that, the industry is starting to grow. It's growing slowly, but it's getting there.
Does cancer research play a significant role in in this region, and particularly in Roanoke, with all these partnerships that we've just been talking about?
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
And, not only are they building a new cancer center over there in the Carilion campus, but the city and Verge and Johnson & Johnson have worked together to do competitions that brought in people with really good oncology-related ideas to test their ideas in front of a panel of judges, and the winners of that are able to get free lab space here. For now, I think the lab space that they're using is down at Virginia Tech, but they ultimately hope that these folks would have their setups here at the labs on Jefferson Street after they're completed, which is expected later this year. So different oncology businesses are being drawn here for that, and they're hoping to keep them here with the facilities that are available.
Do you have a sense of what Roanoke's reputation is with regard to this? Are we more known on the national level because of things that have happened here, or this part of Virginia, because of all these changes that we've seen here in Roanoke with regards to partnerships with Carilion and Virginia Tech?
Hey,
Turn off your phone, Tad Dickens. It's a podcast.
That's telling me to brush my dog's teeth.
So getting back to Roanoke's reputation, are people telling you that, or are you hearing it yourself?
I think that maybe something that I need to look into more is like how, if I were to talk to somebody in Boston, for example, or if I were to talk to somebody in Raleigh, Durham, what they know about Roanoke. But I do know that people from those areas, especially we had a new guy come in, John Hagee. He's not really a new guy to Roanoke. He grew up here, but he is running the RAMP program for Verge, the accelerator program for tech businesses, tech startups, and they're doing a combination of traditional tech, AI, and bio and life sciences and stuff like that. But he had a background of investing or working with investors in the research triangle, and he's bringing that experience up here and is part of the effort to build an investor class that focuses on Roanoke. So that's a lot of what you need to make this kind of stuff happen. And so they're doing outreach, and I'll just proclaim my ignorance. I couldn't tell you how widely known it is, but I do know that people like Warren Bickel, who, have recently passed away, and I was the person who wrote his news obituary for Cardinal, and I was amazed to see that this guy's work has been cited 50,000 times. So he, and through him, Franklin Biomedical Research Institute were very well known. And Michael Friedlander said that he was really happy when Dr. Bickel came here because he could have gone anywhere. And he believed in this place as an area where you could get stuff done. And his specialty was addiction studies. Yeah. And I mean, he made some great strides that people know about. And he was, actually, another kind of local tie-in, Beth Macy, in her book Dokesek, quoted Warren Bickel. Yeah. And so the names and the projects and the goals have, I'm sure, filtered out into the wider world. But my extensive knowledge of it is non-existent. That's
okay. I'm always interested in people's perspectives because growing up here in Roanoke, I've seen the changes firsthand, but I've also been right in it. I don't live in the city right now, but I've been in this part of the state my whole life. And so I'm always interested in what, people who aren't from here, come here from somewhere else, like yourself, or, and you've been here long enough now to have an opinion. But then also these this whole topic we're talking about today with just sort of the transformation of Roanoke into this regional center for all this research in cancer, but also other areas of what we're referring to as biotechnology. It's always interesting to me to hear about reputations and people who aren't from here, their perspectives on it. Where are we headed with this right now in Roanoke in terms of on the same path of, continuing this growth in this particular sector?
Well, there are companies that are starting to make a name for themselves, and I'll mention two of them, and we'll go back to Warren Bickel. He was a co-founder with Sarah Snyder of Beam Diagnostics, which was a way for people to use digital ways to figure out like kind of their addiction issues and how to deal with them, and they're getting close with FDA testing of being able to have their software in wider use, but right now that's already being used in some test situations. And another one is called Tiny Cargo, and that's run out of Carilion Biomedical Research Institute by a couple of gentlemen, Rob Gordy and Spencer Marsh, who have figured out a way that they're using the exosomes in milk to carry cancer treatment medicine to folks by, and I guess injecting them with these milk cells that were programmed to carry sort of, I don't know if medicinal is the right word in this case, but from the mother cow to the baby, to help it along and grow its health through the exosomes.
So exosomes?
Exosomes.
See, a word I'd never heard before.
Yeah, EX.
Is that bad that I didn't know that already? Or is this why I need to read Cardinal News? That's so interesting. I've never heard of that.
You have a great opportunity to read Cardinal News. Yeah. You're right in the thick of it, Dutchie.
I am. Well, I read it all the time, but that's not a term I've heard of. So this is why I love to read when our reporters work, because you're in it and learning these things from the people you're talking to.
Well, I was just kidding you a little bit, because I mean, you're the one that does these podcasts, and I used to do a little bit of podcasting, and that's where I learned so much stuff that, like, there's a million things out there, a million pieces of information that can fly past you, but when you get to sit down and talk with somebody and hear what they're up to, that's just a lot of fun.
Emily Schaubacher, another reporter here, we were just talking. I said the cool thing about being a reporter is you kind of get to spend time in someone's world for that story that you're working on, and it's fascinating to me because everyone's day-to-day experience is so different, and I'm always so interested to sit in someone else's world for a while and hear what it's like, and that's how you learn things like exosomes.
Yeah. Therapeutics. It's a therapeutic treatment
Okay.
for people who are undergoing chemotherapy and radiation treatment, and it's a way to help them recover from that better. Yeah. I was struggling to remember the
because you
details
knew
of
it
that.
wasn't medicinal, so
These things are starting to put Roanoke on the map. They're in their early stages, but like, for instance, the clean room, they're going 3 or 4 companies are going to use the clean room at Carilion Biomedical, and Tiny Cargo is one of them, and they need a very antiseptic environment to get these little cow cells loaded with cancer medicines.
Yeah. Well, very interesting, and you can read Tad's work on this particular area, but also all the work he's covering for Cardinal News at cardinalnews.org. We are a paywall-free nonprofit news service. And Tad, if someone wants to reach you for this particular project or any story idea or anything like that, how do they reach you? What's your email?
Well, we have a really easy email here, and it's just my first name, Tad, at cardinalnews.org.
Yeah, thank you so much for joining us. It's been nice talking to you today. I want to thank you for listening to the Cardinal News of Virginia. Thanks also to Sherry Quinley and Zach Shelton for their support there with Cardinal News. And thank you to our sponsor, 5 Points Creative. You can get more news from us at cardinalnews.org. I'm Dutchie Jessee.
Thanks, Dutchie.